Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Monday, September 13th, 2021 Maplewood City Council. I always begin council meetings with announcements and a little news about what's happening in the city. Tonight, I begin the meeting on a note of grieving and sadness. There was, for some people who aren't aware, a tragic crash in Maplewood. There was a tragic crash on Friday, September 3rd, involving 6 North High School students who were driving a stolen vehicle. They were being pursued by a Ramsey County squad car, and they crashed into a utility pole at Larpenter and Chambers in St. Paul. Marcos, a 14-year-old Maplewood resident, and Elijah, a 15-year-old Oakdale resident, both died. On behalf of the City of Maplewood, I'd like to express our deepest condolences to the families of Marcos and Elijah. We also empathize with the trauma the surviving teenagers are experiencing. We know many in our community are sad about the events that unfolded and the loss of 2 young lives. There was a vigil at the MCC on September 10th to mourn the death of Marcos and Elijah, and a march to City Hall. Last week, I contacted Superintendent Osario of District 622 regarding the availability of grief counseling for North High School students. I also reached out to Emma's Place, where Marcos lived with his family, regarding grief counseling for his family and friends. I also offered to connect Emma's Place with our city social worker, Amy, who might be able to refer them to grief counselors. I contacted our faith leaders in Maplewood, and I asked them for prayers and support for Marcos's family and for the other kids and families affected by the crash. I connected a local Maplewood pastor with Emma's Place staff to lend direct support to Marcos's family and friends as may be needed. I've also been in communication with representatives for the families of the kids in the crash, and I've also spoken with Tanya, Marcos's mother. I have invited them to a meeting with myself and our public safety director to share what we know about the crash and to provide them with answers to their questions. It is clear there is misinformation out there, and we want to help provide the facts to the grieving families. This is time for grieving for families and friends of Marcos and Elijah. I ask my fellow council members and our community to keep all those affected by the crash in their thoughts and prayers over the coming weeks. I also want to address our Maplewood public safety officers who arrived on scene after the crash and rendered life-saving emergency medical aid to those injured and trapped in the stolen vehicle. The vehicle had struck a utility pole and downed power lines, creating a dangerous situation for fire, EMS, and police officers as they used the jaws of life to remove the kids that were trapped in the vehicle. I want to thank all of you for your extraordinary efforts at a very chaotic crash scene. I also want to thank Maplewood Public Safety Director Beardeman, our command staff here at Maplewood, and all of our police officers for the professionalism that they exhibited during the Friday night vigil held to remember Marcos and Elijah. Your preparation and presence ensured a peaceful vigil could take place, and all those impacted by the crash could express themselves and grieve. Thank you so much for your continued professionalism to serve and protect our community. Thanks. I'd like to introduce Emily, Maria, and Sophia Hawkinson. If you please would come up to the dais, up to the center right here. They are going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. They are the children, the daughters of Sergeant Hawkinson, who is being promoted tonight. They're coming up with their mother. If you want to stand over by the microphone. For the record, Ms. Sint, it is Emily, Maria, and Sophia Hawkinson, because we want to make sure that we note your names in the record of our minutes for this meeting. So with that, we are all going to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Ladies, would you begin with us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. And now we can get our meeting started. City Clerk Sint, would you do the roll call for us?
Councilmember Cave.
Here.
Councilmember Juniman.
Here.
Councilmember Knutson.
Here.
Councilmember Villavicencio.
Here.
Mayor Abrams.
I'm here too. Thank you. Council members, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move approval. Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the agenda. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion passes. Going on our agenda, the approval of the minutes. I need a motion for the August 23rd, 2021 City Council Workshop meeting minutes.
I move approval. Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the August 23rd, 2021 City Council Workshop meeting minutes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Next, we have the City Council meeting minutes for August 23rd. Is there a motion?
I move approval. Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the August 23rd, 2021 City Council meeting minutes. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Moving on our agenda to appointments and presentations, administrative presentations, the council calendar update. City Manager Coleman, this is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Abrams, members of the City Council. The calendar update is meant to give you a snapshot of what's coming up at our next workshops or council meetings. On September 27th, we will devote our workshop to commission interviews, and we have a lot of really good candidates this time, many. So that's really encouraging to see people in our community willing to be involved. At the council meeting, you will do actual reappointments for existing commissioners who are choosing to continue their service. On October 7th, the City Council will meet with the senior management team at a staff retreat to do some strategic planning and other items that we typically do once a year. Last year we didn't meet because of the pandemic, so we have a lot of work to do. It'll be a really nice day, I'm sure. On October 11th, we will have more commissioner interviews at the workshop and appointments then following at the City Council meeting. With regard to items that you have staff working on in terms of research or other areas of interest, you have the parking space requirement review, which you got a snapshot of that for the area around the mall this evening, and we'll talk to Mr. Thompson about where we're at with the remainder of that work. We also have a report due to you on using goats for the removal of buckthorn in our city properties and parks, open space, and so Audra Robbins will be preparing a report for that as she is continuing to gather information. And then at the last meeting on 8/23, we added the garbage recycling can storage requirements. We've been getting some calls from residents that are not understanding our ordinance or pointing out the people who are not following our ordinance. So we will be doing a survey of other cities and how they address that issue, and also creating some sort of informational or educational communication to our residents on that topic. With that, Mayor, that's all I have, unless you have items of concern that you would like to address with us tonight.
Council members, is there anything else that you would like to add under council comments? Seeing none, then we will move on. Thank you. The next agenda item is the swearing-in ceremony for Police Sergeant Tim Hawkinson and Police Lieutenant Joe Steiner. This is always one of my favorite things at a council meeting, is when we swear in new officers or promote officers or we get new canines. That's a really special time. So with that, Public Safety Director Beardeman, I will turn it over to you.
That'll work. All right, good evening. Let me start by thanking our mayor, city manager, and city council for your support, as well as the officers, firefighters, command staff members who are also with us tonight for this promotional ceremony, swearing in of Lieutenant Joe Steiner and Sergeant Tim Hawkinson. My promotion to Director of Public Safety this summer left vacancies in our agency for both Lieutenant as well as for Sergeant. Both Lieutenant Steiner and Sergeant Hawkinson went through a traditional internal promotion process, which included written assessments, multiple interview panels consisting of community stakeholders, police supervisors, and command staff. They also went through a thorough psychological leadership assessment and, most importantly, a chief's interview. Lieutenant Steiner and Sergeant Hawkinson rose to the top of their respective processes and were selected for promotion over many other very qualified candidates. I'm incredibly proud of the both of them. Leading people is an honor, and leading officers is a calling. Supervising police officers in today's climate will be a challenge, and in the days, months, or years, at some point, you will look back and ask yourself, why did I sign up for this? When you think of this question, I encourage you to think of three things. Number one, leading cops is a great honor, and it will be the most rewarding thing to reflect upon at the end of your career. Number two, you want to make a real difference in our community and in this profession and in the Maplewood Police Department. And number three, and what I think is most important, our community and this profession need you. If not at any other time, policing needs leadership now. Tomorrow, each of you will get a personally signed letter from me. In that letter, it will outline my expectations and what they are of you and all of Maplewood police supervisors. The closing paragraphs of that letter state the following. I trust that you will always conduct yourself in a manner that will validate the wisdom of the Maplewood Police Department having promoted you. Please don't ever forget the high standards and expectations that I have for you as a lieutenant and a sergeant of the Maplewood Police Department. In closing, I want to make sure I communicate to you and your families, congratulations to both of you and your families, and remember to always serve our community and this profession with pride and honor. Once again, congratulations, Lieutenant Joe Steiner and Sergeant Tim Hawkinson. At this point, I'll ask Lieutenant Steiner to step up. Ready? Sure. Mayor, Council, this is Lieutenant Joe Steiner, otherwise known as Badge 232. I'll just give you a little bit of brief intro on Joe's bio. Joe grew up on the east side of St. Paul and started his senior year at Harding High School. Joe has been with the Maplewood Police Department for over 20 years, starting off as a community service officer, and he became a Maplewood police officer in 2006. Joe has his Bachelor's of Science degree in law enforcement from Metro State and a master's degree in public safety administration from St. Mary's University. Joe is also an FBI Leadership Trilogy member. Throughout his career, Joe has been very active. Joe served 3 years as a patrol officer and then moved to a position in the Ramsey County Violent Crimes Enforcement Team. Joe has also served as a field training officer, spent many years as a SWAT operator, and most recently had become a training unit instructor. In 2015, Joe was promoted to police sergeant, where he supervised patrol officers, the street crimes unit, and the investigative unit. In recent conversations I've had with Joe, he's expressed his interest in being a police lieutenant because he believes he can help support and lead our officers, as well as working very closely within the community. Throughout his career, Joe has also been very involved in community outreach as well as problem solving. Joe has personally told me in recent conversations that he is very excited and honored to be promoted to police lieutenant, and his only concern is that working Monday through Friday may affect his golf scores and tee times. At this time, Joe will be sworn in and give the oath of office.
I, Joe Steiner, do solemnly swear
I, Joe Steiner, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
and of the state of Minnesota,
the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully discharge the duties
and faithfully discharge the duties
of the office of police lieutenant
of the office of police lieutenant
in the city of Maplewood,
in the city of Maplewood,
in the county of Ramsey,
in the county of Ramsey,
and the state of Minnesota,
in the state of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
I will never betray my badge,
I will never betray my badge,
my integrity, my character, or the public trust.
my integrity, my character, and the public trust.
I will always have the courage to hold myself
I will always have the courage to hold myself
and others accountable for our actions.
and others accountable for our actions.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Per tradition in Maplewood, Joe has asked his parents to pin on his badge, correct?
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and City staff. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you all for your support. I would also like to thank my parents, Bill and Karen, my brother Adam, who could not make it tonight, Chief Beardeman, Chief Nadeau, and all my family, friends, and colleagues who have supported me greatly. I would also like to thank Chief Tamala, who is in the room tonight, for promoting me, along with Chief Bannock, and for hiring me back in 2006, and for Chief Beardeman for promoting me tonight. Thank you. It is a great honor to be sworn in before you tonight as a lieutenant with the Maplewood Police Department. I am grateful for the opportunities I have had over the past 20 years with the Maplewood Police Department and the City of Maplewood. The experiences and knowledge I have gained are invaluable. As a lieutenant, I will take that experience and knowledge and use it to support our staff to the best of my ability. Leadership is so much more than just merely supervising people. Leadership is professionally developing, coaching, mentoring, and caring for those who you lead. Leadership requires integrity, trust, and accountability for all. I look forward to working with our great community to continue building great relationships and trust with the police department. I truly believe in educating those not familiar with police work on what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. I also look forward to working with our staff on problem-oriented policing strategies. Holding criminal offenders accountable and bringing justice to victims is important to me. It is also important to me that as a department, we treat everyone in our community fairly and with respect and compassion, no matter the circumstances. I'm very proud of the work we have done as a department over the past few years, with special focus and collaboration on domestic assault initiatives, mental health outreach, sexual assault initiatives, community outreach, the Multicultural Advisory Committee, and Department Transparency. I'm excited to continue this work. Most of all, I would like to thank all the public safety staff here in Maplewood for the great work they all do every day. I read a recent study that said the average person will experience 1.5 to 2 legitimate critical incidents in their lifetime. The average police officer, firefighter, over a 20-year career will experience 800 critical incidents. If everyone in the room could please stand up, turn around, and give the women and men in uniform behind us a round of applause for their service and dedication to our community. Again, thank you for everything you guys do in the back of the room. We truly appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor, Council, City staff, and Chief Beardeman. I'm really excited to get working as a police lieutenant, and I appreciate the promotion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. This time we'll call up Sergeant Tim Hawkinson. Mayor and Council, this is Sergeant Tim Hawkinson, otherwise known as Badge 333. A little bit about Tim. He has a strong connection to Maplewood and the Maplewood community, having grown up and lived in Maplewood his entire life. Grew up in South Maplewood. Tim graduated from Tartan High School and then graduated from Winona State University in 2005. Tim has been with the Maplewood Police Department for 14 years and served as an acting sergeant prior to being promoted on 3 separate occasions. During his time with Maplewood, Tim has been a field training officer, a training unit instructor, a member of the street crimes unit, a member of the recruiting committee, and a liaison to the Ramsey County chaplains. Tim has shared with me that being an FTO and trainer has been some of the most impactful things he has been able to do. It has allowed him to have a real impact on the officers and thus the future of the department. He enjoys mentoring officers and providing them guidance. I have worked closely with Tim over my career, and I can tell you that he is truly one of the most loyal and dedicated officers I've worked with. His positive attitude, along with his ability to connect with officers and the community, make him a great fit to be one of the future leaders of the Maplewood Police Department. At this time, Tim will be sworn in and give his oath.
I, Tim Hawkinson, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and of the state of Minnesota,
and of the state of Minnesota,
and faithfully discharge the duties
and faithfully discharge the duties
of Office of Police Sergeant
of Office of Police Sergeant
in the city of Maplewood,
in the city of Maplewood,
in the county of Ramsey,
in the county of Ramsey,
and the state of Minnesota,
in the state of Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment and ability.
to the best of my judgment and ability.
I will never betray my badge, my character,
I will never betray my badge or character,
my integrity, or the public trust.
my integrity, or the public trust.
I will always have the courage to hold myself
I will always have the courage to hold myself
and others accountable for our actions.
and others accountable for our actions.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I believe your wife Heather is going to pin your badge on.
Thank you. All right.
And I believe Tim wants to say a couple words. I don't know if he wants to, but he's going to.
Well, I've got a lot. I have quite the speech to live up to here, and or to follow, I should say. So, all right, Mayor, members of the City Council, and Chief Beardeman, thank you for the opportunity to be sworn in for my promotion to Police Sergeant today. And thank you to my family who have been so supportive throughout my career over the last 14 years, as well as supportive of my desires to seek promotion for our department. This day has been a long-time vision of mine, dating back to when I was probably 3 years on as a patrol officer. Just kind of dawned on me, seeing other sergeants and seeing what they do really made me find the desire to become a sergeant one day. I've considered myself an informal leader for our department for many years now, whether that's a part of our training unit, part of our recruitment team. And for most of my career, I've been driven to do more than the minimum. And this promotional opportunity is another chance for me to do more than just come to work, take my calls, and go home. Having formal leadership experience or having a formal leadership role will allow me to have a bigger voice in our department. And I intend to use that voice to support and promote the department's strategic plan and support those values that are so important to our department through example. And I really look forward to continuing to motivate people, mentor people, and coach officers moving forward. Thank you again, Chief Beardeman, Mayor, members of the council, and everyone present for this opportunity to be sworn in front of you today. And I really, really look forward to many years of service as a police sergeant for the city of Maplewood. I'm really excited about this. It's something I've been working hard for. And I'm just very, very happy, but really proud to be a part of this now. Thank you.
I'm going to take it with the real camera now. You got to take a bunch because you'll be blinking, you'll have a goofy smile. So you get thanked very much.
Yeah. Yeah. Settled back into our meeting, and the next agenda item is an update of the Parks and Recreation Programming and Nature Center task forces, and Assistant City Manager Mike Sable is going to be making the presentation.
Good evening,
Welcome.
Mayor and council members. Thank you. Mike Sable, Assistant City Manager, HR Director. As you noted, this is going to be an update of the Recreation Programming and Nature Center Task Force update. And what I did want to provide is just some context and history. I'll do this somewhat briefly, but in March of 2020, obviously COVID-19 hit and put an end to all in-person programming and stopped direct services to our clients. And in June of that same year, 2020, we recognized that it was going to be financially very difficult to maintain and operate services. And so there we initiated a closure, of the Nature Center and of Parks and Recreation Programming. And just to give you a sense of scale, with just regard to the recreation programming services, that's about a $750,000 reduction, and Nature Center operations was just about $300,000. And to put that into some context, as you contemplate the budget later today, those two numbers combined would be roughly a 4 to a 4.5% levy increase change. So this did result in a significant service reduction to both of those services. But I think that the council wisely saw a need to have a continued dialogue about both of these services. And so in July of 2020, this body created two task forces, one specific to the Nature Center, one specific to recreation programming and services. In August of that year, two task forces were named after dozens of residents applied. In fact, two council members currently, Councilmember Juniman and Knutson, were council liaisons to both of those groups. Those task forces were staffed by myself, Audra Robbins, and Neil Brenneman, who are behind me. We began meeting in September of 2020 and concluded our work through the end of the year and presented preliminary findings in January of 2021 of this year at the second council meeting. Both task forces identified 6 primary areas to base their recommendations on, and the recommendations are included in the background packet of the material. Those categories were around physical assets, partnerships and prioritization, service levels and business model, regional cooperatives, the financial component, and then values and philosophy. And I want to say that these categories emerged organically just through the conversation. These tended to be the 6 really critical things that were important for making recommendations going forward. What I want to do is then give a brief update, and I will say on the front end that we will prioritize the physical assets and the partnership and prioritization more, because that's where the bulk of the work really centers, and there's a good explanation for why, and I'll get to that shortly. But with regard to physical assets, cities are unique in that they own a lot of infrastructure. They own a lot of land for parks. They own a lot of lands for fields. They own a lot of playground equipment and facilities and things that support recreation services and recreation programming. And in fact, Audra and her team have done a remarkable job of preserving that infrastructure, whether it's the fields and the facilities and the equipment, or making renovations to tennis courts, or making investments in playground equipment, enhancing the offerings at the Wakefield Park community building, really taking a lot of effort into preserving that infrastructure, and Audra and her team really deserve a lot of credit for that. But it's not just the nature center, it's not just the parks area, it's also the nature center as well. So there has been continued ongoing investment into the nature center, whether it's the boardwalks or the bridges or the surface parking lot, which if you drove in that parking lot a year ago, it was a crumbly mess. It was very complicated. And Steve Love and his team did a really nice job of making those renovations to the parking lot. So the community can be reassured that the investment in the physical infrastructure can continue and maintained. The one variation that I want to then emphasize then is the other work to date, and this is Neil and Audra have done extensive work in terms of reaching out to partners. There are a dozen or so nature centers around the area. They reached out in direct outreach to all of them to say what kind of program offerings were they're offering, what they could bring together, how might that fit in with our nature center, really trying to create a kind of a robust partnership network. The other piece that I think has really emerged, and you voted on it earlier today as Economic Development Authority, is the relationship with the YMCA and their role in terms of providing service to our residents. And so they had received an allocation of the first round of Federal CARES Act money, and recently received some ARPA funding as well. So that is, I think, an enhanced partnership as a result of the task force work and task force recommendations. The other piece that has increased is really the relationship with the athletic associations and community programming. This has been an evolution of sorts for many communities around the region that in some places the cities don't provide any programming, and it's all done by a volunteer parent network who do athletic associations and coordinate those things. The other thing, and I did hand out in front of you a copy of what is on our city website, and this is really a resource for our residents that if they know that they're interested in some sort of a program for themselves or some sort of a youth program, they're not bound by geography. So you can do a thing in Woodbury or Roseville or Oakdale. And so what we wanted to provide is a really kind of robust offering of services so that you can experience around the region. And I think those are important parts to know because, some people might not like T-ball here. They might like to do T-ball in Oakdale. And so the offering of choice to our residents, I think, has grown, and that's a direct result of some of the outreach efforts that the staff have done. And the other component that's, I think, we've made some effort, but it's been challenging, is with the school districts, with their challenge of how to have more. They're actually still worried dealing with COVID directly and providing direct service to these children. So their outreach into programming and sort of accessory services has been minimized. But when they call us and need a field, we step in and fill the gap. And I think Neil and Audra have done a really good job of figuring that out. I did mention briefly how others are stepping up. We have seen Northeast United Soccer continue to grow their programming for youth soccer. The Minnesota Rec and Park Association, which is a kind of a collaborative of cities around the entire metro area, continue to do information sharing around pricing models and different service groups. We also have seen others step up. The Friends of the Maplewood Nature Center have started to offer their tree trek program, which is a trail system where they can go and identify trees. And then we've also tried to do some other things with regard to the Nature Center, like beginning to start to move staff there. So having been a former facilities director, I know that buildings need to be lived in. They want to be used. And so having staff there as a resource for community is an important piece. And so we're starting to see more people down at the Nature Center. The other thing that I think that is happening is that we're starting to identify the gaps. And this is where the partnership with the YMCA has been critical because they offer certain things but not others. And associations focus on maybe one sport but not others. And it has taken this entire time to figure out where the gap is. And Neil and Audra have identified a couple of service providers that do this work of coordinating and filling in the gaps. And so Revolutionary Sports is one that's often called Rev Sports in the industry. And they currently offer programming in 25 metro area cities. I've got them up, some of them up on the board. But what they really do is they use the city's platform of, say, fields and say, listen, we can come in and provide the service. The residents we can build them directly. We can recruit coaches. We can recruit umpires. We can do this service for you. And it's an evolving model that's maybe different than it was 25 years ago, but really common today. And I think one of the things that we try to identify about other gaps are we know that volleyball is a big thing, and adult volleyball is an important place, and people are looking for gym space and looking for those kinds of things. And so as we try to identify where the future demand is, I think we're going to continue to try to fill gaps. One of the questions that we sort of raise generally within at the staff level is how do we continue to provide access to these opportunities and still fully use all of this physical infrastructure. And I also, I do kind of want to note that sometimes interest in programming evolves, and so we just come off of the Olympics, and the local hero is a gymnastics gold medalist, and so I can imagine an influx of people wanting to join gymnastics programs. And so this is always a dynamic, fluid situation, and I think it's important for us to make sure that our physical infrastructure is ready and prepared so we can continue to serve the public. But this is the update that we have today. This work is ongoing, but I think from the perspective of the task forces, we have really done as much work as we can on the priority areas 1 and 2. It does leave open the question of what is the right service model, what is the right business model. And part of that requires a financial component, and part of that requires the kind of the values and philosophy, that making sure that whoever can provide a service aligns with what we would want them to do. And so this is an ongoing effort, but I wanted to stop and provide just kind of a brief update. And I'm more than happy to answer questions, and Neil and Audra are as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sable, for that report. It certainly has been a challenging time with COVID and trying to figure out how do we continue to provide services. I guess in looking at this, it also gave us that opportunity to really do a reset and take a look at what other communities are doing. I found it very helpful to the chart that you put together, or maybe Audra put it together, I'm not sure. Audra? Okay. Thank you. And Neil. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. About the program delivery methods for other communities, because I think that, when we are in the midst of it, we don't really recognize maybe what other communities are doing and what the trends are. And looking at, I've always known that there were associations. My children are 31 and 29, and they played, I'm certainly dating myself, but they wanted to play football, and Maplewood didn't have football. And so they played for the North St. Paul Football Association, and that's just the way that it was. But looking at how that has been such a trend, and many cities have more or less kind of transitioned into something like that. My question is, can you tell me just a little bit more about Rev Sports, because that is a relatively new option, or maybe Audra or Neil can maybe talk a little bit about that. Because we certainly want active people in our community. And I think really the question for the council is, how do we do that? How do we provide that? I really appreciate the fact that you focused on the physical assets, because we are maintaining those. And you didn't mention, but we also just did $75,000 in upgrades to our nature center boardwalk and bridges and such there, and also partnerships and prioritization. But can someone maybe inform the council a little bit more about Rev Sports and how that works? What does that look like?
Mayor, council members, thanks for having us here. And just a little bit of update kind of on Revolution Sports. There's a few different companies that do that. We spoke to them about filling the gaps what we need. And so they offer anything from camps to clinics and leagues for sports, t-ball, baseball, soccer, softball. They also offer like Ninja Warrior stuff, and Ninja Warrior fitness classes and camps. And what they do is it's a turnkey operation for them. We provide them some space, work out on session dates, maybe what dates we'd like to see, and tell them we can kind of tailor the programming to what we want as city staff, what we see. What used to be popular, that we used to have successful programs, and maybe if they can bring them back in and they can operate them. And then their philosophy is that they want to have a coach. They want to be able to essentially have a home base in each city where a coach or two can start to develop that relationship with the participants on a regular basis, so that it's not someone new every time we're offering a program. That when someone when they get a city that they work with, that they're able to have a consistent programming base where the staff that they bring in can develop that relationship with the community as well, which is something I really liked. It was a good quality to have, because we used to have that kind of same relationship with regular staff members, and having someone do that I feel is important as well, rather than just kind of new people every time, and maybe not that consistency, but. And yeah, so that's kind of the general idea behind that. If there's any other questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much for that answer about Rev Sports. You can sit down. We'll get to a round of questions, because I'm sure that there will be other questions for Audra and Neil. But I really appreciate the focus on filling the gaps, and the fact that we are identifying what those gaps are and finding ways to do that, I think is really helpful. I know we've got a couple of council members that want to ask some questions. Mr. Sable, were you done with what you wanted to say? And then I will I'll ask questions from the councils.
I'm here for questions.
Okay, perfect. I didn't see who was first. Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if there's an answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Where are we? I know you said there have been some contacts, but do we have any inkling that there could be any kind of a collaboration made on the east side here with Harriet Alexander Nature Center in Roseville and so on, of nature centers coming together and possibly sponsoring some programs with us or
Ms.
in our
Robbins.
facility?
Thanks, Mayor, members of the council. As we have reached out and talked quite extensively with the other nature centers and other cities, and right now it looks like the best possibility for a collaboration is with Ramsey County, looking to do some things, and also the Discovery Center over in Oakdale.
I was going to ask you about that.
So
yes.
those are the two strongest.
Okay.
Other, again, with COVID and just trying to
Right.
regroup and figure out what they're doing in their own nature centers, it's not quite at the point where we could do anything, but they've expressed interest, so
good.
we're hopeful that that will develop into something. So.
Yeah, and the Discovery one in Oakdale is a little bit different than us, but that would be a good thing to meld those two options together, because then we can be offering things for each other.
Right, and we have things at our site that they don't have, so we've got some good synergies going there,
Oh,
so we're
good.
hopeful.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Kate.
Just a couple comments. Great job, you guys. I think the Rev Sports is really evolutionary into like filling the gap. Just keep saying the same thing. But I have kids and grandkids in sports, and it's really important. And I also think, thanks for the website, Mike. When you live in Maplewood for a long time, when you were involved in sports, some people lived in South Maplewood and were like, how do I get involved? I'm really closer to Woodbury. I want to go there. And it's nice that we have this. I even see East Twins in here. It used to be you had to know when practices or know when signups were by word of mouth. Everything wasn't transparent for people. Kids need it. So I really like that. And one more comment, when I ran for city council, the nature center, we closed it. People were it was just really a lot of mixed feelings. I know one of the words the mayor mentioned to me was pausing, and I really like that because, yes, it was closed, but it really was put on a pause. And now it's taken to a new word, to reset, and I think that's such a positive thing we've done for the citizens, to turn something that they thought was going to be, a shutdown into just a more opportune, community we have now for people to do things. So thank you for all your hard work.
Councilmember Juniman.
Just following on that, I thought for a long time that we could be partnering with Oakdale because they don't have what we have, but they have things that we don't. And it's so, yes. So, yes, they have a much bigger space, for one thing. So I think some really good things could come out of this, and I don't want people to lose faith. You see what our people are doing. They're working hard, and we may end up with, for that point in history where everyone is with, if you will, a better product, because it will be sustainable and will actually have a broader way to keep things moving. So thank you.
Mayor, members of the council, if I can add, I know we included on the update some of the programs that are coming up at the Nature Center, the buckthorn demonstration, rain garden rescue, and the emerald ash borer education, but we're also working with our environmental planner, Sean Finwell. She just came on board in our department, and she's setting up a solar demonstration with a group that's going to come in and talk about solar energy. So There's a lot of hopefully good things coming in that will take place at the Nature Center. So Just stay tuned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council members, I think that it warrants just a little bit more discussion, because you can have a seat and we don't have any other questions right now, but I want to hear from my fellow council members and kind of weigh in on this, because I think what staff has presented to us is the result of a lot of hard work in trying to sort this out and then position us for the future once we can all get through this pandemic. But I'd like to hear from my fellow council members, because one of the things that stuck with in my mind was Mr. Sable talking about the fact that, between Parks and Rec, $750,000 that were cut, and the Nature Center, $300,000, that is the equivalent of 4 to 4.5% of a tax levy increase. And we are already tonight talking about a 5% tax levy increase. And so I would like to hear from my fellow council members about those implications. But before, I want to ask Councilmember Villavicencio if she would weigh in, since you served on the Parks Commission and you also served as the chair of the Parks Commission. What are your thoughts concerning this? Because this is a really important discussion for our community. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it, and then I'm going to ask Councilmember Knudsen as well.
Definitely. Thank you, Mayor. And first I want to, just say thank you to Audra and the whole team. They do a really hard job and work hard at what they do, and I really appreciate everything they do. The thing that I have heard from the other commissioners and other residents is that the recreation part, they really don't want to miss the Maplewood part of that, and having the accountability to saying that it's Maplewood recreation. But I like the rev up thing. I think that's a really great idea. I just think that I think maybe if we just make sure we really communicate to the public what options are out there, I think that'll help a lot of people so that people know what's out there.
One of the things that I would say is that I have gone to the website and I looked at it in preparation. This is all clickable, so that if you're looking for anything, you can go and find it on our website and find some place where that can be. What are your thoughts concerning the tax implications, the potential tax implications about these two, about Parks and Rec and about the Nature Center?
Well, I agree that I think that the tax implication would be very difficult for Maplewood to absorb. I think that, I think that's why looking at partnering with other cities makes a lot more sense, so that burden isn't on the residents.
Okay, thank you. Councilman Knudsen, your thoughts?
I was on liaison with this task force. Was kind of interesting to me is the Maplewood has a significant commitment to parks and land, and as we had a graph, similar to one here, and we're talking about how other cities conduct themselves, and I think that what struck me is that I think there's a piece of this is an obligation as a city, to take care of the youth sports and things like that, and then there's leagues and kind of a business side of sports. So I want to make sure, that we fund appropriately all the things that we should do for our community and the things that that people find valuable to move here and to work here and to live here. So I whatever programs we've had, I think they need to be supported by taxes, no matter what.
So explain to me more, because what we're talking about, to go back to what we were doing, we would have to further increase our tax levy by an additional 4 to 4.5%. I mean, we're looking there at 9.5%.
Well, what's interesting, in if you look at pages and pages of to-do, I mean, I would ask, how long is it going to take to accomplish all this? I mean, there's a lot of stuff here. And, there's other... there are parts of it, I think, that continue our obligation to provide.
I would just point out that this isn't actually a to-do list. This is a progress report on what they have accomplished already.
But I mean,
are you looking the rest, the old one, or
the original?
I'm trying to get sure.
It was.
But in terms of the progress report, how do you view that?
I think it's amazing what we've been able to do, with limited funds and so forth. But I think in time we need to figure it out. Maybe it won't be exactly what it was, but I think the combination of shared interests with other communities, and and the leagues. I mean, I don't think a lot of this stuff should be absolutely free. On the other hand, there ought to be an obligation again to families and youth. I think that the city ought to do. So I don't have a number.
Okay.
But. 4.5% seems a little steep for this year. But I think we gradually need to work into what we're going to support publicly and what we think is the business of recreation.
Okay. Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you, Mayor. Following on that, both for Parks and Rec programs and the Nature Center, I do think that we have to, at some point, pull it closer together. I mean, we have facilities that we are keeping up, and so if we're going to put money into maintaining and improving facilities like the playground equipment and all that type of thing, then we have to present that to the people who have these programs that will run sports for us, because it just seems unnatural that they might want to use some of these good facilities we have. So we have to find a way to pull them together, and that's probably going to mean some staff time. So at that particular juncture, we are going to have to put some money into it, because we don't want to waste what we're maintaining, and we don't want to keep people in the dark. Well, how are we going to get to this? As she was pointing out, I am so old. I do remember when the Maplewood Athletic Association took care of all the leagues. So, and from that came our need for the parks and the fields and all that. So I just think there's a way to go back, partially back to that, where we maintain the facilities and we have but we will need a point person who will connect with the various leagues and support staff in the different sports, in the different options that they even have for recreation programs. I think that stuff is out there, and I think that has changed a lot. But the need to find what we have to offer where these things can be done needs to be melded with them. So we're going to have to, at some point, perhaps not in 2022, although we should probably start looking at how are we going to do that. And we need a point person. I mean, Audra and Neil can just go so far before they'll explode. They can expand, but there is a limit. And I think that we are going to probably need a staff person if we're going to help connect people with all of the great facilities we have. I mean, I think that's where we're headed. Not right this minute, maybe, but we're headed there.
It sounds to me, well, I mean, I think Mr. Sable identified the goal is to fully use our parks and our trails and our fields and all of the physical assets that we have, because we are maintaining those. And that really goes to the quality of life here in Maplewood, which we all care about. Councilmember Cave, I'll give you one last opportunity. Just in terms of, we're looking at kind of, I guess this is a reset on all of this and what this is going to look like into the future, and the tax levy implications for it.
I think this is definitely something that the people of Maplewood want. They've always wanted Parks and Rec. I know when COVID hit, it was a very loud, they got very loud about Nature Center and Parks and Rec. They were like, where is it? Sometimes people don't understand the implications of how much things cost and how much things cost now. I mean, things are not free. I don't think they're expecting everything to be free, but they do expect us to keep the parks and the recreation there for their children and family. It's a lifestyle here in Maplewood. People come here for that reason. Council members have said that, and I agree with them. People come here, and there's an expectation, and I think that's what our job is, to provide that. With tax, if there's going to be an increase, I mean, there's going to be. We're going back into, we cut the whole program out. We cut the Nature Center and the parks out.
Well, just for a point of clarification, we had no choice.
Exactly.
Because we could not do programming. We could not have people together. We were all locked down, and we could not do any of that. And so, I mean, I'm viewing this is an opportunity for a reset.
Yes.
And figuring out how are we going to deliver exceptional programming in both the Nature Center and the Parks and Rec Department, given the fact that now we are at a different time. We're slowly, I'm an optimist, things are getting better, and we will eventually be out of the pandemic. So I think we are doing, from what I'm seeing, and council members chime in with me too, about your thoughts. What I am seeing is that we are working very hard to figure out what this is going to look like into the future. And we will be having this discussion as we go along. This is where we are now. I really commend staff. That progress report, that is there's a whole lot of accomplishments in what you've been able to accomplish based on those task forces. That really was quite impressive. And I think it's a good education for all of us to learn about alternatives, to learn about different ways of looking at things. So, Mr. Sable, do you want to? I don't see any other lights on.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. The one thing I would say that we have seen as you kind of look across the region, as you look across how this has evolved, each component might be different. So this program might be a city program specific. This might be an association. This might be a company. This might be a school district. And it will be a patchwork of services that meet the needs of the community. It just might not have a stamp that mirrors each one. And so I will say that no city has figured out the right mix of patchwork, but that the commitment is there to deliver quality services in the best way. It just might look differently depending on whether it's basketball or volleyball or football or dance or what. And so it requires really gifted, talented staff, and I'm really confident in the two over there that Audra and Neil can figure this out. With a little bit of time and a little bit of effort and a little bit of innovation, I think the model is there to work. It just hasn't been finalized yet.
It's a work in progress. And I think the Council members, I think what I hear all of us saying is that it is a goal that we fully use all of the physical assets that we have and that we have an active and engaged community, because that really is what Maplewood is known for, and it's all about the quality of life here. Councilmember Knudsen.
Quickly, you asked some real hard questions, which I really appreciate. I think we need to deal with this a little more often. In other words, the implications of, I didn't do the math myself, but I trust the 4.5%. That's staggering. So we got to figure this out. I need a little more engagement. I'm not criticizing anything. I'm willing to engage.
Well, I think that City Manager Coleman, that we can engage in this maybe on a quarterly basis, because this is actually going to be impacted by the pandemic as well, and what things are going to look like. And do you have any thoughts on that, City Manager Coleman?
I do, Mayor. I think that we have done a lot of innovating so far. We managed to keep all our facilities up and running, and we did do as much program as we could during the pandemic. I think what I hear is that you'd like more discussion about this, or more updates and progress reports. And I too.
With the budget.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly, the line item, whatever we can do.
Okay. Yeah, and I think actually the mayor and I have talked about a couple of ideas. Audra is working with Neil and others to look at other ideas, but you can already see just this, in the short time we're moving in the process of moving staff down to the nature center, things are starting to come back, and I think you'll see the same thing with recreation programming too. I also will throw out that I think next year will be a much better year in terms of our partnership with the YMCA and their role in providing programming. They were hit really hard by the pandemic, and you've heard about that once tonight. You'll hear a little bit more about it again at the end of the meeting. And I think there's some real potential there that has been untapped, and I think the Y is eager to come to the table and talk about that in more detail than they have been, just because of the things, the trials they've been having during the pandemic too. So I think there's a lot of innovation left to do, and I think we have really great staff to make sure that happens.
I think it's exciting, and I think, council members, we need to be prepared to have these discussions, and we really appreciate Neil and Audra and all the work that you're doing on this. So thank you very much. Councilmember Juniman.
I think one of the things that we need to keep bringing up along the way as well is that nothing in life is free. Mm-hmm. So if the tax dollars are going to keep the facilities going and we are still going to offer programs, we are going to have to be more realistic about what we charge for programs. Because I have an example from quite a while ago, but it still applies. I was on the east side of St. Paul, and it was when the East Asian population increased by a great number, and they were going to have this great idea in the summertime at St. Paul Parks. They were going to offer some, shall we say, workshops to get acquainted with what you could have in a park in St. Paul. And they had actual programs mapped out, and they passed out flyers in the neighborhood that they were targeting, and it was free. They got 5 people. Parents were not. They just didn't get lit up. So the next time they offered it, they offered the same thing, and they charged $10 a kid, and they were full. You have to let people know that the value is there, mm-hmm. and the only way we can maintain the value is to have them participate.
Which I'm sure we will be having more discussions about this, as we've all requested. It's important.
Mayor, if I could just conclude my comments, we really have to get a better handle on that, and that's part of how we got here, was that we weren't charging appropriately for the services we were providing. And so I know that Audra and Neil are marching forward with that in mind, that we want some contributions to how we maintain our parks and the things that we need to maintain our parks. And I think that the business itself, if you looked at that chart and what other cities and communities are doing, you better believe it, they are asking for more money. And so I think we have to keep that on top of mind too.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Sable, would you like to, any other comments?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, council members, for engaging in a discussion. This is important. These are important decisions that we will be making, and I think the more updates we can get, I think that ultimately we're going to land at a very good place that is sustainable. and sustainable in new and creative ways. So thank you, Audra and Neil. And we have no action on that. That was really just an update. And let's see, moving on, we have the consent agenda next. We have 2 items on that. Would someone like to make a motion for the consent agenda?
I move consent agenda items G1 and 2.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passes. Moving on to public hearings. We have 2 public hearings tonight concerning 2 road projects. We're going to start off with a presentation. Mr. Jerish is going to be doing the presentation. We're starting with the Montana-Nebraska Area Pavement Rehabilitation City Project 20-08. Mr. Jerish, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Council. Like you said, the first project we're going to talk about tonight is the Montana-Nebraska Area Pavement Rehab, and we're here tonight to hold the assessment hearing. So special assessments are just one of the funding sources that the city utilizes to finance our public improvement projects. And properties that are directly abutting the improvements are asked to pay an assessment for the direct benefit to their property. Each year, the City Council sets a maximum assessment rate depending on the type of improvement project we're doing. And then during the project design phase, we hire an independent appraisal firm to determine what that actual benefit is that the properties receive from the improvements. And per state statutes, we cannot assess those properties for more than they benefit from the improvements. Just a note that the assessment hearing was delayed this year, similar to 2020, due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The idea there was to buy some time and hopefully get into a better position in the pandemic, as well as reduce the amount of interest that accumulates on the assessments over that summer period. So prior to the assessment hearing, all the residents in the project area were mailed an official statement of assessment that included the amount of their assessment, options for paying their assessment, options for deferring their assessment, as well as their right to object to their assessments. And as of the start of this meeting, I have not received any objections to the assessments for this project. In total, there were 280 assessable parcels in this project area, so a fairly sizable project. The residential rate for single-family homes, which were the vast majority of the properties in the project area, that rate was $3,450 per unit. We did have a handful of duplex properties. Their rate was $1,955 per unit. And we did have some quadplexes as well, and their rate was $1,911.50. Those were the rates that, the maximum rates that were set by council, and those rates were confirmed through that independent appraisal report. There's a number of options for paying assessments. Residents can make a full or partial payment to the city up till November 1st of this year, and those payments would be interest-free, with the remaining amounts of those assessments being certified to Ramsey County to be paid with their taxes over a 15-year period. Or residents can just allow the full amount of the assessment to go onto their taxes over that 15-year period. And it's important to note that those assessments, once certified to the county, they do include interest, and that interest rate is 3.3%, and that interest rate is reflective of the bonding rate plus an administrative percentage over that 15-year period. So there's a couple options for deferring assessments. It's important to note with a deferral, it does not make your assessment go away. It just delays when that assessment has to be paid. So deferrals are for a 15-year period, and they do include interest over that time frame. And residents can apply for a financial hardship or a deferral if it creates a financial hardship and one of these following conditions applies. If the resident is 65 years of age or older, if they're retired due to a disability, or if they're a member of the National Guard or other armed services called into active duty. If they're one of those items and it creates a financial hardship for them, they can apply for a deferral of that assessment. We also offer what's called an undeveloped property deferral. So if a resident has a vacant lot, they can request a deferral. It's also for a 15-year period. It does include interest over that time frame. However, if no improvements are made on that property in that 15 years, that assessment will be terminated at the end of that 15-year period. So in total, the assessments for this project came in at just over $918,000, which represented about 39% of that project funding plan, with the remainder of the funding coming from the Street Revitalization Fund, which is represented on there by gas franchise fees, as well as the various utility funds. And I am happy to report with this project, we are just about done. The final layer of pavement is going to go on the streets starting tomorrow, and it'll be wrapped up by the end of this week, with the contractor pulling out of the project area in the next couple weeks here. So we're looking good. So staff is recommending that the City Council hold the assessment hearing tonight and take in public input on the proposed assessments. And then following that assessment, the public hearing there, staff is recommending that City Council consider any staff recommendations for any objections that might come in during the assessment hearing. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Mayor, for the assessment hearing.
Thank you very much. Before, I'm going to explain to anyone who's here for the public hearing what's going to happen. I'm going to ask staff if they have any questions for Mr. Jarish. And then if there are no questions, then we'll move forward to the public hearing. If there are questions, he can answer them. And then I will open the public hearing, and I will ask Ms. Sint if there is anyone on the list who would like to hear or would like to speak to the council concerning the assessment. They will have 3 minutes. If they have any questions, we don't answer during that 3 minutes, but then I'll, at the close of the public hearing, I'll refer the questions or the comments over to Mr. Jarish for his response. And then the council will consider taking action. So with that, I see a question from Councilmember Knudsen.
Thank you, Mayor. Is that 3.3% interest, is that fixed for the 15-year period?
Councilmember, yes, that's fixed for that period.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions, council members? Seeing none, then Councilmember Juniman.
Thank you. So this moving the assessment hearing to the fall is only for these 2 years when we've had the COVID thing, or is this something we can or might do permanently?
Mr. Love?
Mayor and Council, so a lot of cities actually hold it in the fall. In the past, we have held it at the time of award of contract. I think the reasoning before was so that as council is awarding the contract, they also fully understand the assessment amounts and how much of it, whether we're having any objections. But a lot of cities do hold it in the fall.
Okay. It just seems somehow cleaner to me, but I could be wrong.
And I think it benefits the residents in terms of the interest. Mr.
Right.
Beatty, do you have any comment on this?
Madam Mayor and Council, as Mr. Leff says, the usual provision is to hold it in the fall. And one of the benefits to the city of doing so is that you can catch any change orders that come in. If you award the contract in the spring, you've got the set amount then, but it's fairly common that there are change orders. If you assess it in the spring, you're not going to be able to capture those. So I think traditionally, most cities that I'm familiar with have waited till the fall and been able to assess the full amount.
Okay, that's Mr. Love.
Mayor and Council, and that is something that we could take direction on from the council if this is something that you're looking to do. You would like us to see us do on future projects moving forward.
Okay. Council members, I'm in favor of doing the assessment in the fall.
When I asked why I asked, it seemed cleaner.
Council members, are you all in favor? It sounds like it?
Yeah.
Okay. There's your direction, Mr. Love. Thank you. And I think it certainly benefits our residents. So that's great. Okay, with that then, I'm going to open the public hearing concerning the Montana-Nebraska Area Pavement Rehabilitation City Project 20-08. City Clerk Sint, are there any people who would like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. No, there's no one signed up at this time.
Okay. I know I don't have to do it 3 times, but I am going to give that call 3 times because we don't have anyone on the list. Is there anyone who would like to make any comment concerning the assessment for the Montana-Nebraska Area Pavement Rehabilitation Project? Last time, is there anyone who would like to address the council concerning the assessment hearing and receive, to make any objections or comments concerning the Montana-Nebraska Area Pavement Rehabilitation City Project 20-08? Seeing none and hearing none, then I am going to close the hearing on that particular issue, the public hearing. And council members, we have 2 recommended actions before us today. Would someone like to make a motion?
I move to approve the resolution adopting the assessment role for the Montana-Nebraska Area Pavement Rehabilitation City Project 20-08.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Knudsen. The motion to approve the resolution adopting assessment role for the Montana-Nebraska Area Pavement Rehabilitation City Project 20-08. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any noes, say nay. Hearing none, the motion passes.
You know what that tells you? Those people over there have been going, thank goodness.
They're very glad, I'm sure, to be able to get their roads fixed. So we have one more city project tonight. And Mr. Jerish, that one is yours as well. This is the Southcrest Ferndale Area Pavement Rehabilitation City Project 20-09.
Thank you very much, Mayor, Council. This will be a very similar presentation to the last one, just customized for this project. So we're going to run through this again really quickly. Special assessments are just one of those funding sources the city utilizes to finance the public improvement projects. Each year, property abutting the improvements are asked to pay an assessment for the direct benefits of their property. And each year, the city council sets a maximum assessment rate based on that type of project. Again, for this project, we hired an independent appraisal firm to assess the direct benefit the properties in the area receive from the improvements. And per state statutes, we cannot assess higher than that direct benefit the properties receive. Similar to the other one, this assessment hearing was delayed due to COVID-19, as well as to reduce the amount of accumulated interest. Prior to the assessment hearing, the residents in this area were also mailed that statement of assessment that included the amount, how to pay the assessment, what options are available for deferring it, as well as the right to object. This one, we did have one objection that came into it, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. In total, there's 209 accessible parcels in this project area. This project consisted entirely of single-family residential properties, which the rate was $3,450 per unit. And again, the appraisal report did confirm that these rates were reasonable. Several options for paying it. There's the full or partial payment options, interest-free up to November 1st of the year, with remaining amount being certified to Ramsey County to be paid with the taxes over a 15-year period. Or residents can just allow the entire amount of the assessment to go onto their taxes over that 15-year period. And same as the other project, the interest rate on this one is 3.3%. Same deferral options are available, so that would be for a 15-year period, and it does include interest over that time frame. So if the assessment were to create a financial hardship and one of these following conditions, residents can apply for the deferral. So if you're 65 years of age or older, if you're retired due to disability, or if you're a member of the armed services called into active duty, you can request a deferral of your assessment. We also have the undeveloped deferral, property deferral, which is also for a 15-year period with interest. However, if no improvements are made to that property in that 15-year period, that assessment would be terminated. For this project, the total assessment amount was $724,500, which represented about 35% of the total project funding, with the remainder coming from the Street Revitalization Fund and the various utility funds. This project also, I'm happy to report, this project actually has the final layer of pavement on all of the project streets, and they're going to be doing the final touches on the project, some boulevard restoration and things over the coming week, and pulling out of there likely sometime next week. So We're getting close on this one as well. With that, staff is recommending that the council hold the public hearing for the assessments tonight. And then after that, staff is asking that the city council consider staff recommendations for actions on any objections we receive as part of the public hearing. And with this one, we did receive one request of cancellation of assessment. This property was proposed to be assessed for 2 units because it was large enough to be subdivided. However, we did identify that a large portion of that vacant parcel was covered by a utility easement, so it's basically undevelopable. So staff is recommending approval of the cancellation of one of those 2 units, so that property would just be assessed for 1 unit in total. With that, I'll turn it back to you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Jerish. Are there any questions from the council? I don't see. Oh, Councilmember Juniman.
Well, I may as well verify. Are both of these projects tonight probably being made possible because of our gas franchise fee that says we fix roads?
Mr. Jerish.
Yes, Mayor, Council, these are a direct result of the gas franchise fee and that street revitalization fund.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, then we are going to go to the public hearing. I'll open up the public hearing concerning the Southcrest Ferndale Area Pavement Rehabilitation City Project 20-09. City Clerk Sint, do we have anyone who would like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. We do not.
Okay, I'll do the same thing again, just to be sure. Is there anyone who would like to speak at the public hearing for the Southcrest Ferndale Area Pavement Rehabilitation City Project 20-09? Oh, there is someone. Thank you. Welcome. Would you please state your name and give us your address, please?
Yeah, my name is Miguel Olvera, 967 Dennis Street, Maplewood, Minnesota. Dennis Street South, Maplewood, Minnesota.
Okay.
Mayor, congressmen, and women. Come up because I got the letter in the mail saying that today was the last day to submit deferral statement. You guys were a lot talking about COVID and the pandemic. I don't feel like there was a program for individuals who could have suffered, but there's no official paper or document to say, okay, I struggled through the pandemic because either I didn't get sick or I didn't get fired, but there's still hardship within me and my family, right? Everything's okay, but financially speaking, my dad doesn't work at a restaurant anymore, and my mom doesn't work cleaning houses no more, so this $3,450 that is due, or else with interest over 15 years with 3.3%, may not seem a lot to some people, but to me, I believe it's a hard, it's a lot for a short amount of time. Being is that I also live on a corner lot, I don't utilize as much of the road as the rest of my neighbors. That's a little bit selfish of me to say that, but it is true. I use a very small portion. And this morning, there was a water main break on my intersection. So I'm sorry for that. I'm in these clothes because I didn't have time to shower because there was no water. But besides that's the point. Seeing if there's anything that else that you guys can help with. Not necessarily me, but I feel like being that the meetings were done virtually, many people might have missed out on this. Me being that I am a younger individual, I was able to access it through the online meetings. I don't know how many other people have this. I have neighbors across the street who I'm also, not on their behalf, but I am speaking here to get more information for them and myself because I want to see if there's any other options for, I'm not a veteran, I'm not disabled. I can be here, but realistically speaking, it's something that I feel like because it was a virtual meeting, not a lot of people could attend. Now we have the meetings able to attend, but it's on the final assessment and payment is due in November 1st. So kind of just some questions and see if there are any other alternatives, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there, what we'll do is I'll find out if there's anyone else who would like to speak, and then if not, I will close the public hearing and then talk to we'll ask Mr. Jerish and Mr. Love to respond.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Miguel. City Clerk Sint, is there anyone else? Okay, is there anyone else in the audience who would like to make a public comment concerning the Southcrest Ferndale Area Pavement Rehabilitation City Project 20-09? Okay, seeing no other hands raised, I will close the public hearing. And Mr. Jerish or Mr. Love, would you like to respond to the questions that were asked, please?
Sure, Mayor and Council. So Deferments and cancellations are set by state statute. What the city can provide, we're limited to that which is set in the state statute. So the 3 deferrals that we spoke of, the senior citizen, the disability, and the military, and it has to be a financial hardship, are what is set by the state statute. So we aren't able to offer another program beyond that.
Can you explain then, I recognize and sympathize with the challenges that your family's having as a result of COVID. So how can you explain for those people listening and for Miguel as well, how is it that the assessment will be made if they are financially challenged at this point?
Mayor and Council, so if a full or partial payment cannot be made, the assessment amount will be put on their taxes, the property taxes, over a 15-year period. There is interest, and that is at 3.3%, and that is at a fixed rate for that 15-year period.
And is that process also, is that also set by statute?
Yes.
Pardon me?
I believe so. Is that correct? Yes. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. City Manager Coleman.
Mayor, I don't want to suggest that there might be some funds available somewhere from the county. I do remember in the past they did have some help for assessments for folks. So, Miguel, if you'd like to give me a call, I will check with the county folks to see if there's any grants or other funds that might be able to help. I can't promise you that that's the case, but I do remember we talked about it during the COVID period last year. So I can look into that for you if you want to give me a call.
Thank you very much for raising that concern. Council members, we have a motion in front of us. Would someone like to make that motion?
I move the resolution adopting the assessment roll for the Southcrest Ferndale Area Pavement Rehabilitation City Project 20-09. Do I need to include the objection that has already been processed?
Mayor, Council, the objection that came in before is already included in the assessment roll in the packet.
Okay, so I don't have to include that in this. Okay. All right. That's
Thank
my
you.
motion.
Is there a second? Moved by Juniman, seconded by Cave, the motion to approve the resolution adopting assessment roll for the Southcrest Ferndale Area Pavement Rehabilitation City Project 20-09. Is there any further discussion, council members? Hearing none, then let's go to a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed signify by saying no. Okay, the motion passes. And thank you very much, City Manager Coleman, for following up with Miguel and his concerns. We have no unfinished business. We do have 2 other new business items. The next agenda item is the resolution adopting the 2022 preliminary property tax levy and setting the 2022 budget public hearing date and time. Welcome, Finance Director Paulseth.
Just going to cover a few things that were delayed in the last couple of meetings. So tonight, you'll be considering the adoption of the 2022 preliminary property tax levy, and you're also going to set the date and time for the 2022 budget hearing, which will be December 13th at your regular council meeting at around 7 o'clock. So again, a 5% levy increase is what you would be adopting tonight. You cannot, after tonight, you cannot increase the levy, but you can lower it. It's about 1.1 million is what's being recommended tonight. The impact of that, I have tweaked the numbers again after receiving the fiscal disparities from the county. So at this time, the estimate of the median home in Maplewood is $268,300 for the market value. Last year it was $260,700. So there has been an increase in the value of the median value of home. Not all of that is taxable. About $255,000 of it is taxable. Last year, the tax on that was $1,036. This year, it would be roughly $1,112. These numbers will continue to be tweaked as we move throughout the rest of the year, but that's a very close estimate, about a $76 increase on city taxes, which is a 7.3% increase. I know that's a little more than what you wanted to consider. Keep in mind that the county is helping out this year. Their levy increase will be between 0 and 1.5%, and that is over a third of the levy, and the city is roughly a third. So the 7.3% is on the city's 1/3, and so the counties should have a very mediating effect this year. And it's too early to know about the school district increases because their referendums are not until November. Again, it's about a 4%, slightly more, about a 4.25% increase in expenditures in the general fund. This is a piece of information that we were missing. So the increase that the fiscal disparities pool is providing Maplewood this year is $89,000 increase over last year. So recall last year it was about a $250,000 increase, which was awesome. This amount, as you can see throughout the years, has been slowly trending up, sometimes some ups and downs, so it really is kind of hard to tell. But that took about 1% off of the levy last year, because these amounts each year get deducted from the levy that you're adopting. So the $23 million that you're adopting tonight, $3.5 million is coming off the top of that from this fiscal disparities pool. So this is really, really a good program. It would be very, very difficult for suburbs to have good quality of life if it was not for this program. So again, $3.5 million. Just to cover this one more time, how the fiscal disparities program works. It was established by the Metropolitan Council in the late 1960s. All of the commercial industrial property values in the metropolitan area get put into a pool, and then there's a formula that gets applied. And so the idea is so that these suburb cities can have some benefit to that commercial industrial property that is primarily in Minneapolis and St. Paul and some of the larger suburbs, so that there can be a benefit, since the suburbs, experience the expense side of some of those issues. So Maplewood has been a gainer from this program. So again, right off the top of the levy. This will be the tax rate. We will continue to tweak throughout the year, but right now we're projecting it to be slightly higher than last year, 43.559%. But as you can see, it's been on a steady downward trend, which indicates that excellent job that the City Council has been doing, keeping spending affordable and sustainable. Lastly, I promised to bring you kind of a survey of what some of our peers were doing. This happens to be the Ramsey County cities, because I had better access to some of those numbers at this early state of the game. Two of the cities, Vadnais and Falcon Heights, did not respond to the survey. But as you can see, Maplewood is lower than the average. If you take out White Bear Township, who had some debt problems this year, if you take that 19.25% out, you'll be, I believe it was a little under 6% average. So Maplewood is still under the average for levy increases for 2022. Just a quick reminder again that at the end of the year you will have the opportunity to distribute some surplus from the general fund. As I mentioned earlier in the EDA meeting, there is $100,000 going to the EDA fund for your housing rehabilitation program. And as well, we will continue to work through the ARPA funding allocations as the time, when the time comes for each particular item on this list. And again, you see that the blight removal and affordable housing, we're still showing an allocation of $350,000. Again, that probably won't happen until 2022, as that's probably when those projects will really get going. So it's not really included in anything that we're talking about tonight. So what staff is asking for tonight is for the City Council to adopt the resolution adopting the preliminary levy and setting the truth and taxation hearing date for December 13th. And so that resolution is in your packet, and adopting the total of a $24 million levy, which includes the $100,000 for the EDA fund. And I'll also be available for questions, too.
Thank you very much. Point, you and I spoke earlier today, and would you, for those people who are watching,
Sorry.
maybe,
It's getting
could you
late.
explain there was a typo on the front
Yeah, the very first
page.
page of the staff report. It's what happens when you use a template from the year before. Last year, we had a decrease, so about the four lines up from the bottom, I mentioned that we have an estimated 7.3% city property tax decrease on the median value home. That should have said increase. Last year it was a decrease, so I apologize for that. That should not have gotten through. I should have caught that.
Thank you very much. In the past, property taxes are always, they can be a very confusing thing for people. And I know in the past, I think you've used a dollar bill, and we have put something in the living on kind of breaking down that dollar bill to show where the increase comes from, because it's not just us as the city. There are other taxing authorities. And council members, we've already talked about the HRA levy that is going to be added, which is $45. That's Ramsey County. Thank you for checking with Ramsey County. Their proposed tax levy is, you said, between 0 and 1.5% that they're projecting. The school district, you're right, we don't know yet, but council members, I don't know if any of you saw this. This was put out by the school district, and I thought I would bring it in because the school district, there are going to be two questions on the ballot this fall. The first question has to do with renewing an existing levy that's not going to go up, but just renewing an existing levy that was passed back in 2011. It keeps funding that's already in place. But the second question, the school district is going to be asking for a $3 million technology and curriculum capital projects levy that will equate to a home. We use the same comparison, a $250,000 home at $575 per month. So that is whatever the math pardon me?
$70.
About $70. So, when you do that, we certainly won't know about the tax levy until after, or the school district levy until after November. But I would ask that, we get that kind of explanation, because I think that helps a lot. We also have the watershed districts. There's a lot of different taxing authorities, and for people to understand where that tax money is actually going, who they're paying it to, in the past has been very helpful. I know I've heard comments from residents about that. So, thank you for helping us through this challenging time trying to sort through all of this. I don't have any other questions. I just wanted to alert council members that this is something that is a possibility as well in terms of all of these tax discussions. So council members, is there any other questions that you have for Ms. Paulseth? I know we've been looking at this
for a long time.
For a long time, multiple times.
And Mayor Abrams, thank you for reminding me. I am working with Mr. Sheeran on that piece.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I think that's so helpful, and you do such a nice job. It's such a great graphic, and it really helps people understand where does their tax money go. Mm-hmm. Many people think that it all comes to us, and that is not the case. So, Councilmember Knudsen, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering about the ARPA funds. When you look at the array of things, they look like things that we would ultimately sometimes finance. But some, like for instance, the social worker, ultimately want to build that into our budget, I would assume. So of all these things we're getting, are we making provisions for our future budgets?
City Manager Coleman, do you want to reply to that about the social worker Because I know you've had discussions with the county.
Yeah, actually, Ms. Paulsa and I met with the staff at Ramsey County, and this is a estimate of what the cost will be, and we also are still pursuing what they're willing to do as well. But yes, obviously, this is something that we're going to have to pay attention to. There's many items. There's a couple of other items that we're going to really have to be concerned about moving forward as well.
Yeah, we're, like you say, we're getting relief. But going forward, we're going to have to
Temporary
figure it out.
relief.
Yeah, and
Right.
really, the use of ARPA funds for a staff position is not ideal.
No.
But it gets the program started and gives us time to work through a contract with the county that would hopefully be a little more favorable than what you're seeing here.
Thank you.
Councilmember Juniman.
Yes, well, as long as that came up. I think they aren't quite sure either, because we've, as is not unusual for us, we've kind of set a new standard, and there are other cities going, wait, how did they get a social worker? Wait a minute. It's like, well, you snooze, you lose. So they're probably going to have to approach this differently when they start getting other requests and figure out that. But I think what they're also going to figure out is that it's going to assist them in their mental health programs at the county, which I'll be polite and say the Lord knows need help. But I think it's going to cause a whole shift, and they will come out ahead in the end if they assist some of us to do these things and solve some issues at home, if you will, that never get to the county and possibly to John Choi's office and so on and so on and so on. So I think there's a lot of discussing that's going to have to go on at the county.
I fully
about this.
support it. I just want to make sure we're thinking ahead.
Right. I think that came up as part of the discussion, that's something that we're going to have to look at. I think it also may just be that the county's model will change. That the way that they actually deliver services may be at all of these different city sites. And then, I think that might change everything too. But at least we're cognizant of it, and we're really making intentional decisions about what's going to be best, recognizing that that particular position would be funded through 2024, and there is benefit to that. Going forward, we don't know how the county may change and what we may need to do, but we'll have to tackle that.
Mayor, can I just add
City
one
Manager
thing?
Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just add, actually, the mayor and I were on a phone call on Friday with Ramsey County officials and city officials to talk about mental illness and how to address that issue. And I think one of the summarizing comments was, it's all about funding. We have to figure out how to fund this. So there is, there's interest being generated, as the mayor can attest to that. All the cities are trying to find out, how did you do that? We want to do that. And so I think the discussion will be continuing. I didn't hear if there was a next meeting scheduled, but it was really a good meeting. I think it laid the groundwork for the kinds of conversations you were just talking about. How are we going to pay for this, and what's the model going to look like for the entire county?
Thank you for that. Good point. Okay, council members, any other questions? Then we have a motion before us. Would someone like to make that motion?
I move to adopt the resolution setting a preliminary tax levy for taxes payable in 2022 of $24,369,853. What? No cents? And setting the 2022 budget hearing for December 13th, 2021 at 7 p.m.
Second.
Moved by Juniman, seconded by Knutson, the motion to adopt the resolution setting a preliminary tax levy for taxes payable in 2022 of $24,369,853 and setting the 2022 budget hearing for December 13th, 2021 at 7 p.m.
So Friday the 13th is on Monday in December.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you, council members, and thank you, staff.
Yes.
Finance Director Paul Sept, please, accept our thanks and thank your staff as well. These are challenging times, and thank you for all of the time spent in educating us on the budget so that we could make the best decision possible for our city. So Okay, we have one more agenda item. This is the second amendment to the Maplewood Community Center operating agreement. City Manager Coleman, this is yours.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. The City of Maplewood has an agreement with the Y of the Greater Twin Cities to operate the Maplewood Community Center. The current situation related to the pandemic has changed the nature of their business operations, and earlier this evening, the EDA provided a business grant for the Y. This is just the second piece of that to clean up the operating agreement document itself. So those changes that were made for the second amendment are indicated on page 122 of your staff report. And there really are three changes. The first one is to allow the Y, instead of putting in their required $220,000 to the capital fund, which is to keep the building maintained, we are allowing them to deposit $75,000 for 2022, and that money is committed to redoing the men's locker room. So in other words, we're allowing them to suspend some of the upkeep and maintenance issues for one more year, but we are requiring them to do the men's locker room updates. The second item is that we are going to go ahead and put in our maximum total of $212,242, and that doesn't impact anything that the city is required to do. That will fulfill that obligation, but we're clarifying that in this operating agreement to make that clear that we're still putting in our share towards capital. And then lastly, we are maintaining the right to use the banquet area facilities for up for 15 hours a week under the same terms and conditions as was allowed in the first 48 months of the term of this agreement. So with the next page then is the actual amendment language. That's on page 123. We are looking for a motion to approve the second amendment to the Maplewood Community Center operating agreement dated today, September 13th, 2021, and this will be in effect for next year. And I would be happy to answer any questions. I can also give you some updates on where we're at with our relationship with the Y in terms of the next 5-year agreement, too, if you'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
Could you please provide that
Sure.
additional information?
So, as some of you know, we have been negotiating with the Y for probably the last 4 months. Their initial request of the city was a lot larger than what we are approving this evening. And one of the things that this does is really buy us another year. Because after the ink dries on this one, we'll be starting another round of negotiations. Ellie and I will be meeting with the Y to look at that last 5-year agreement. I anticipate that it's going to be a little tough because I think their business model is changing. I think they have had a lot of struggles financially. On the bright side, last week I sat in on the interview committee to interview for a new director. And he is, I think, an amazing young man. I think he's going to do a really good job. We had a very long conversation about he asked what I thought was the biggest challenge, and I said youth programming, get more programming in here. We need commitments from you to do more programming. That's part of our deal. Mm-hmm. And I think we got a really good person. So I'm really optimistic about that. I think negotiations will be tough based on the last 4 months that Ellie and I had with them. But I also have told the mayor that this time around we're going to bring in Bruce Kimmel from our Ellers, our financial consultant, to be with us from the get-go to help us negotiate that deal. And for those of you who haven't been around, Mr. Kimmel was with us when we did the first agreement, and he was really helpful. He has had experience working with communities that have Ys, and I think it just makes sense to bring him in. So I feel really good about that as well. So I think things are going to get better. I look at the parking lot every day. It looks a little busier. The mayor is a frequent user of the swimming pool, and that's pretty busy. My husband goes to the White Bear Y, and he says things are picking up there too. So I think things are kind of turning around. But I will tell you that they have painted a picture that is pretty bleak for the last year and a half. They've lost a lot. I think that there's some challenges within the organization with all the turmoil. They laid off a lot of people. They're trying to build back their staff as they can afford to do so. So they've had quite a few challenges. We want to help them, but we want this to be a partnership. which implies that we both have some skin in the game. So I do appreciate all of your support through this. There were times when I wasn't sure we were going to get this deal done. So really appreciate the support the council has shown me and Ellie in working through this agreement.
Thank you. Council members, questions for Ms. Coleman? I see no lights on. Then is there a motion?
I move the Second Amendment to the Maplewood Community Center operating agreement with the YMCA.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Ginneman, seconded by Knutson, the motion to approve the Second Amendment to Maplewood Community Center operating agreement with the YMCA of the Greater Twin Cities, dated September 13th, 2021. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any nays? Hearing none, the motion passes.
Mayor, I want to address what...
Councilmember Ginneman.
Thank you. To address what Melinda just said, I actually think they may learn something if Bruce Kimmel is there. I mean, I think that could improve the whole picture for everybody because he knows what he's dealing with and he's got a much broader picture than they do, I think, so they'll probably learn something too. I'm serious. I think that's a
I think
good
it's a
thing.
wise decision. Very good. So with that, council members, we are at the end of the agenda. I want to thank you all and staff members as well for doing the business of the city tonight. And with that, we are adjourned.